How did a fake whiskey fool millions and rise to the top of America's liquor shelves? Because what people were drinking wasn't whiskey. It only looked like it. A cinnamon shot packaged like a spirit, sold like a spirit, and trusted like a spirit, without ever meeting the legal definition of one. Today, the brand sits in more than 170,000 stores across the country, and not one of those little bottles contains a single drop of real whiskey. In just a few years, those tiny bottles generated over $70 million, triggered lawsuits, and even ranked among America's top 50 beer brands, all built on a loophole so obvious, anyone could have spotted it. But to understand how this illusion became a national phenomenon, we need to go back to the beginning. Because before the mini bottle deception, there was a much bigger one. Before it became a cultural phenomenon, before it took over college bars and gas station shelves, the product behind America's fake whiskey was a complete embarrassment. In 2007, it sat untouched on the bottom shelf of liquor stores across the country. Dusty bottles, boring label, no identity, no audience. Its name was almost a punchline: Dr. McGillicuddy's Fireball Whiskey, a sugary schnapps pretending to be something it wasn't. And that was the real problem. Whiskey drinkers hated it because it tasted like candy. College kids ignored it because it looked like medicine. Even the distributors had written it off as a lost cause, the kind of product you carry because you have to, not because anyone asks for it. Sales were flat, reviews were brutal. The brand was dying slowly, quietly, and very publicly. But inside the Sazerac Company boardroom, someone noticed something everyone else missed. The schnapps market was crowded. Dozens of flavors, countless brands, all chasing the same shrinking demographic. But the whiskey market? That was wide open. Young drinkers weren't buying whiskey, not because they didn't want to, but because whiskey wasn't built for them. And that single insight changed everything. Because the team at Sazerac didn't just see a failing product, they saw an opportunity hiding in plain sight. What if they stopped trying to sell a whiskey that whiskey drinkers didn't want, and instead built a whiskey for people who didn't even like whiskey? That question would launch one of the boldest rebranding moves in American liquor history. Inside Sazerac's boardroom, the problem wasn't the flavor. It wasn't the bottle. It wasn't even the dying sales curve. The real obstacle was the category itself. In the late 2000s, the flavored spirits market was exploding. Peppermint, peach, bubblegum, everything designed for the same audience. Young drinkers looking for something sweet, cheap, and fast. It was a battlefield with no room left to win. But whiskey? Whiskey was still traditional, serious, mature, protected by decades of craft, heritage, and rules that kept newcomers out. And that's when an executive at Sazerac asked the question that changed everything. What if we made a whiskey designed for parties, not for whiskey drinkers? On paper, it sounded impossible. In reality, there were three massive problems standing in their way. Problem 1, the name. Dr. McGillicuddy's Fireball Whiskey sounded less like a drink and more like something you'd find in a pharmacy aisle. Problem 2, real whiskey burns. College kids wanted smooth, sweet, no questions asked shots, not a crash course in American oak. Problem 3, real whiskey takes time. Years in barrels, millions in investment. A process Sazerac didn't have the luxury to follow. But where most companies would abandon the idea, Sazerac saw a crack in the system, a narrow opening in US labeling laws that almost no one in the industry had bothered to exploit. And once they found that loophole, everything changed. The forgotten schnapps on the bottom shelf was about to evolve into something entirely new. A product that looked like whiskey, felt like whiskey, without ever having to be whiskey at all. This wasn't rebranding, this was reinvention. To turn a candy-sweet schnapps into something that could pass as whiskey, Sazerac needed more than a rebrand. They needed a legal miracle. And in American liquor law, miracles usually hide in the fine print. Real whiskey has two non-negotiable rules. Rule 1, it must be 40% alcohol or higher. Rule 2, it must be aged in wooden barrels. Not for weeks, not for months, but for years. That aging process is what gives whiskey its depth, its color, its price tag, and its legitimacy. Fireball had none of that. It was 33% alcohol, it wasn't barrel-aged at all, and it was originally classified as schnapps. By every traditional definition, calling it whiskey should have been impossible. But then Sazerac found their opening. Hidden inside federal regulations is one soft category, flavored whiskey. a label that was created for distillers who wanted to experiment. Vanilla-infused bourbons, honey blends, maple finishes. Not for a mass-market cinnamon shot, and certainly not for a schnapps on life support, but the rule was clear. If you added just a trace amount of real whiskey to your product, you could legally call it flavored whiskey, even if everything else inside the bottle was sugar, spices, and additives. So that's exactly what Sazerac did. They bought cheap bulk Canadian whiskey, blended in a whisper of it, and suddenly their 33% cinnamon liqueur scraped by as flavored whiskey. No barrels, no aging, no craftsmanship, just compliance. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. And while Europe and Japan refused to recognize it as whiskey at all, America's loophole welcomed it with open arms. Sazerac hadn't just found a workaround. They had discovered a backdoor into an industry protected for centuries. Now, all they needed was a brand bold enough to walk through it.
Finding the loophole was only step one.
To turn a technicality into a cultural phenomenon, Sazerac needed to rebuild the product from the ground up, not by changing what was inside the bottle, but by changing what people thought was inside it. The first thing to go was the name. Dr. McGillicuddy's Fireball whiskey sounded like an off-brand cough syrup. They needed something explosive, modern, unforgettable. So they wiped the slate clean and kept only one word: Fireball. Short, sharp. A name that walked into the bar before you did. Next came the formula. Whiskey companies spent years coaxing flavor out of wood and thyme. Fireball chose the opposite path: sweetness, smoothness, and cinnamon heat engineered for one purpose: easy shots.
A drink you didn't sip, analyze, or think about.
A drink you took in a crowded room with music too loud to hear yourself say cheers. Then came the most important shift of all: the audience. Fireball wasn't built for bourbon collectors or cigar lounges. It was built for young people who didn't like whiskey in the first place. And that was Fireball's real innovation. Instead of converting whiskey drinkers into Fireball drinkers, they converted non-drinkers into whiskey buyers, simply by making the experience fun, sweet, cheap, and social. It was whiskey without rules, whiskey without patience, whiskey without tradition, but wrapped in branding powerful enough to make people believe otherwise. For Sazerac, this wasn't about taste. This was about identity. And now that the bottle looked right, the name sounded right, and the flavor went down like candy,
They were ready for the move that would change everything.
taking Fireball out of liquor stores and into the bars where culture is born. Fireball didn't become a phenomenon because of TV ads, celebrity endorsements, or million-dollar campaigns. It started with one man walking into a Nashville bar. In 2010, Sazerac sent brand ambassador Richard Pomes into the field with a mission so simple it sounded almost stupid: make Fireball the shot everyone is talking about. No marketing budget, no ad placements, just a pocket full of cash and a bottle of cinnamon whiskey that wasn't. His strategy was lethal in its simplicity. He'd walk into a bar, order a round of Fireball for total strangers, post a photo on social media, move to the next bar, and repeat every single night. Not selling, not pitching, just creating moments. And bartenders noticed. Here's the secret most consumers never think about. Shots are the highest margin item in the entire alcohol industry. A single ounce costs a bar cents to pour and sells for dollars. Fireball in particular was a gold mine. Sweet, smooth, easy to upsell, and nearly impossible to drink just once. So when an ambassador walked in giving away shots, bartenders didn't see a promo. They saw profit. Within weeks, Fireball became the unofficial fun button of college bars. Something you ordered when you didn't know what to order, a shot everyone could agree on, a shortcut to turning strangers into a group. And then something powerful happened. People didn't just drink Fireball. They talked about Fireball. They posted it, shouted it, brought it to parties, turned it into a ritual. It became less of a drink and more of a badge. If you weren't doing Fireball, you weren't part of the night. Between 2011 and 2013, sales exploded from $1.9 million to $61 million, a 3,100% increase. All triggered by a strategy so small, so human, so uncorporate, that competitors didn't even notice it was happening. And this was only phase one, because Sazerac understood a truth most brands ignore.
If you want to dominate a market, don't just win the bars. Win the people who shape the culture inside them.
Phase two would take that concept and turn it into an army. If phase one was about sparking the fire, phase two was about turning it into an unstoppable blaze. Sazerac didn't need billboards or Super Bowl commercials. They didn't need Hollywood partnerships or polished ad campaigns. They needed presence. Real, physical, in-your-face presence wherever young people gathered.
So they built an army. Not of marketers, but of humans who looked like everyone else.
No uniforms, no branded jackets, no corporate energy, just regular 20-somethings with backpacks full of Fireball, a small budget, and one mission: show up where the culture happens. They hit college tailgates before sunrise. They walked into hockey arenas minutes before puck drop. They appeared at country music festivals, block parties, spring break beaches, and campus bars overflowing onto the sidewalk. And they didn't do giveaways like other brands.
No vouchers, no coupons, no follow us on Instagram demands.
They poured shots, made noise, and left before anyone even knew they were part of a marketing plan. It was grassroots activation at its purest: authentic, chaotic, and impossible for competitors to copy.
Because it didn't look like marketing.
It looked like fun. Meanwhile, other liquor giants were burning millions on digital ads and glossy campaigns that blended into the background. Fireball was doing the exact opposite, winning loyalty one plastic cup at a time. By year 3, Sazerac expanded the ambassador team from a handful of people to nearly 24, strategically placed across more than 20 states. Each one operated like a micro-franchise, owning their city, their bars, their scenes. And the results were staggering. Fireball wasn't just being consumed, it was being performed, posted,
Chanted.
recognized by silhouette alone. By 2014, the brand had exploded into a cultural fixture, outselling legacy names that had dominated shelves for decades. But just as Fireball reached its peak, something happened that should have killed the brand overnight.
Instead, it did the opposite.
It made Fireball unavoidable. The moment should have destroyed everything.
In 2014, European regulators pulled Fireball off shelves across multiple countries. Headlines spread fast.
Fireball contains antifreeze chemical. In an industry built on trust, this was the nightmare scenario. An accusation so toxic, it could erase a brand overnight. The chemical in question was propylene glycol, an ingredient the FDA approves for use in thousands of everyday foods, harmless in low amounts.
But Europe allowed far less of it than the US, and Fireball's formula pushed far beyond their limit.
Competitors smelled blood.
Critics called it dangerous.
Shoppers panicked, and for the first time, people questioned what was actually inside the bottle they'd been taking shots of at every bar in America. But here's where Fireball did something unexpected. They didn't deny it, they didn't collapse, they didn't hide. Within 3 weeks, Sazerac reformulated the entire European recipe, lowered the chemical levels, and put Fireball back on shelves like nothing happened. No drawn-out apology tour, no defensive press conferences, just action. And the scandal? It backfired, in Fireball's favor, because suddenly everyone was talking about Fireball.
People who had never tasted it now knew the name. News outlets couldn't stop covering it.
And in the liquor industry, awareness is the most valuable currency there is. Instead of disappearing, Fireball surged. By the end of 2015, it overtook Jägermeister in popularity and became the #1 flavored whiskey in America. The antifreeze scare didn't weaken the brand, it transformed it. From a fun party shot into a cultural symbol with myth, controversy, and unstoppable momentum. But Sazerac wasn't done bending the rules, because the next move wouldn't just shake the industry. It would unlock 170,000 new stores and spark a national deception no one saw coming. By 2016, Fireball dominated bars, liquor stores, and college parties. But Sazerac saw something bigger, something worth hundreds of millions of dollars. If they wanted to become truly unavoidable, they needed to sell Fireball not just in liquor stores, but in gas stations, corner stores, supermarkets, dollar stores, truck stops, everywhere. There was only one problem. Real whiskey is illegal in most of those locations.
State laws prohibit hard liquor in thousands of everyday retail stores.
But Sazerac didn't see a wall.
They saw a loophole.
And to exploit it, they needed to build a product that wasn't whiskey, but still felt like whiskey. So they created a second Fireball. Not a new flavor, not a new formula,
A new classification.
the malt beverage version.
Alcohol content, 16.5%.
Legal category, beer, not whiskey.
Shelf eligibility, 170,000 new stores overnight,
And here's where the deception becomes brilliant. They didn't change the branding, they didn't change the colors, they didn't change the mascot, they didn't change the bottle shape. The big bottle said, cinnamon whiskey. The tiny bottle said, cinnamon. One missing word. Same fiery logo, same color scheme, same silhouette. Identical at a glance, completely different at the register. And Sazerac knew consumers don't read labels. They scan them. Packaging experts say shoppers take just 3 to 5 seconds to identify a product and decide whether to buy it. That's exactly how long it takes to miss the fine print. Malt beverage with natural whiskey and other flavors. Not whiskey, whiskey flavoring. But the public didn't notice, and the sales numbers proved it. The mini bottles flooded gas stations and convenience stores nationwide, and they were so successful that Fireball suddenly ranked among America's top 50 beer brands, a category they didn't even belong to in spirit, only on paper. The deception was clean, elegant, and wildly profitable. Over 5 years, the tiny bottle version pulled in an estimated $70 million, all thanks to a product millions believed was whiskey, but legally wasn't. For a while, no one questioned it. No one read the front label. No one saw the difference. Until one day, someone finally did. February 2023.
A shopper in New York took Sazerac to court and triggered a lawsuit that would expose the entire system behind Fireball's empire.
The question wasn't whether Fireball broke the law. The question was far more uncomfortable. If a company follows the rules, but designs its product so consumers misunderstand it, is that still legal? And that question would spark the fight Fireball never wanted. The lawsuit didn't stop Fireball. It didn't force a recall. It didn't even change the bottle. To this day, the tiny malt beverage version still sits in gas stations across America. The whiskey version still fills bar shelves, and millions of people still buy Fireball without ever realizing they might be drinking 2 completely different products. The courts will decide the legal questions, but the bigger question, the one Fireball forces us all to confront, is this: what exactly were people buying? Because Fireball never sold craftsmanship. It never sold aging. It never sold tradition, rarity, or authenticity. It sold something far more powerful. A feeling, the fire, the rebellion. The idea of whiskey without the work required to make whiskey. And in marketing, that difference is everything. From 2011 to 2014, Fireball grew from $1.9 million to $863.5 million, a 45,000% increase. Not by changing the liquid, but by changing the perception of the liquid. Because people don't buy what's inside the bottle. They buy what they believe is inside. They buy the story, the identity, the illusion. Fireball understood something ancient and universal. Most consumers don't want the truth. They want the version of the truth that feels the best. And whether you see Fireball as smart marketing, a legal trick, or a cultural scam, one thing is undeniable. They played the game better than almost anyone. The product was simple. The strategy was sharp. The execution was ruthless. Fireball didn't fool America. America chose to believe Fireball. Because in marketing, just like in life, reality matters far less than perception. And perception, in the right hands, can be the most intoxicating product of all.